Welcome to this session of the Cloud Exchange. My guest today is Byron Adkins, the Director of the Interior Business Center in the Interior Department. Byron, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
It's great to be here, and thank you for the invitation, Jason.
We continue our session today about customer experience. And what I love about the Interior Business Center is you have so many different customers. You have internal agency customers. A lot of the Interior Department uses IBC services. You have external customers. You have other agencies who use IBC services. And then you also work with the vendor community very closely on systems and technologies and innovations. Again, they're your customers too. So I'm going to start right there at the beginning. Since it's the Cloud Exchange, let's discuss where you're at today with your cloud digital strategy, and then we'll get to the intersection of customer experience.
IBC is very excited about the future and our strategy as we look for our cloud and digital strategy moving forward. Certainly want to be within the 21st century, and we are undergoing a number of initiatives to chart our future. We have some 30 IT systems and at least 7 high value assets that we're focusing on the interconnections to ensure that we're delivering the best value to our customers. As you mentioned, we have a number of external customers, but we also service the Department of Interior, our parent agencies. And so we're really just starting to develop our framework towards what I would call an enterprise strategy. We have 3 separate lines of business, and each line of business has independently been working on different approaches as it relates to our cloud migration and our strategy. And we're looking across the board from an enterprise perspective, focusing on our modernization and optimizing our legacy systems. We're also focusing on expanding our services, as well as looking to reduce costs ultimately for our customers. And so I will tell you, our customer experience is first and foremost and what we hope to achieve, and creating a positive experience for our customers to better allow them to focus on their missions. And the intersection has always been important to us to understand the voice of a customer, and not just how we deliver on our services, but delivering on what they expect, but what they expect and need in the future as well. And so part of our cloud strategy is incorporating their future needs, having that dialogue with our customers, and being sure that we are posturing ourselves to be the premier federal shared service provider, but also meet the needs of our customers for not just today, but tomorrow as well. More specifically on a tactical level, and I'll just give an example as it relates to our financial management line of business. They've actually already completed a cloud assessment where they had a third party to come in to assist with developing a roadmap specifically in support of our core financial solution that we use to support 17 different customers external to the Department of the Interior. And, we're exploiting the modular SaaS upgrades in the interim as well. And the recent addition of the Prism acquisition solution to add a future addition as well for our SaaS budget formulation solution. So we're really looking forward to that process. We got a lot of good information from that assessment, and really, subject to funding, want to put the plan in place to make that migration as well. I also would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity, and we'll get to this a little bit further, and I'm sure within the interview, to talk about the things we're doing with implementing process automation and intelligent automation, because we're seeing a lot of impressive results with the customers that we've had and the few automations we've been able to put in place as well. And so we really are excited about the future. We're just getting started with framing our framework and our strategy to do this as well within our HR line of business. We have a federal payroll and personnel system combined, which is going to be our largest migration towards the cloud that we're looking to do as well. And so overall, I would just say that this is an exciting time as we start charting this course of what the future cloud and digital strategy will be. And I'm optimistic of the benefits that we'll be able to provide to our customers.
Appreciate the summation. People probably forget how much Interior does, IBC does for all the other agencies, how many shared services. So let me maybe take a half a step back. You said there's 3 lines of businesses, each with different approaches. You mentioned, I think, 2 of them, financial management, HR. Is the third one, if I remember correctly, acquisition services?
Absolutely. So the acquisition services division, they primarily provide lifecycle acquisition, contract and support, but also grant management support as well. Less of a transition. They don't have as many systems. I think they only have 1 or 2 that they operate on. that are managed by the department. And so they have less of a strategy than our financial management and HR line of business. But that is the third line of business that we provide services to the government.
We don't want to leave them out. We don't want to make them jealous, right? No one wants to say you have favorite children. So we don't want to say you have a favorite line of business. When you talk about the different approaches to cloud and cloud migration, is that a lot of that driven by the age of the systems, the needs of the systems today and what's going to happen tomorrow? Or why are they different versus, hey, we're going to move everybody to a infrastructure as a service first and then get to software as a service, or however, whatever order it goes in?
So a little bit of both. Let me preface the context of what I said there. I think fundamentally there are different services that we provide to different customers, and we haven't necessarily to this point, and we're working with now to come up with a overall enterprise strategy for one approach. And it may not be one approach associated with all of our lines of business that we serve. Obviously, there are different needs and different aspects of that. Like you mentioned, some may be more platform as a service versus software as a service. I think the undertone generally with our largest assets, obviously has been looking at some sort of software as a service upgrade to get to where we need, and ultimately getting those assets and those systems into the cloud where they should be. Most of our stuff now is currently on premise. And so we definitely know where we need to go. It's just a matter of making sure we have a solid roadmap. And part of that was taking a pause and say, hey, financial management director, I know you've had assessment, HRD's working it, and coming together to say, hey, how can we do this smartly across the entire enterprise of the IBC? And so, we've been in business for several decades, but there are some instances where we have to reset and kind of get out of our silos to talk about what's the best way to approach this from an enterprise perspective. And so that's where we are as far as level setting across the different lines of business. And now we're going to have a collective framework and strategy for all of our systems.
One of the things that the Interior Business Center has done over the years is you've had to keep up with the changing times, whether it's financial management or human resources and payroll. And a lot of discussion has been around, you said a lot of your stuff is still on-prem. Where are you at that O&M versus DME discussion? Are you spending a lot more money on upkeep and legacy right now, and you're hoping to spend more money on the development, modernization, enhancement? Or have you been upgrading and it just happens to be on-prem and it's going to time to move those upgrades to the cloud eventually?
So we've been kind of going status quo. We have been doing some upgrades to stay relevant, what we have on-prem, but we much rather, focus towards investing into what our future system and operating posture is going to be moving forward. And so we've kind of just trying to maintain what we have. Most folks know with our payroll and personnel system, it's kind of coded on a legacy system. It's becoming more difficult to find folks that actually have that skill set and that language that we utilize. It's super secure, and certainly it gives us a lot of autonomy and flexibility when we need to make changes because we do it ourselves. However, and it works. However, we want to make sure that we're positioning ourselves to meet the needs of our customers in the 21st century and what they need. Oftentimes, we hear feedback, hey, we'd like to be able to work off a mobile app and be able to do those transactions there. Currently, our infrastructure doesn't provide that. And so we're kind of just maintaining operating and the maintenance that's required, not making huge investments in what we have because we know ultimately we want to move to something much more modern.
That's a good segue to that financial management assessment you mentioned. Any surprises from that assessment? Anything that stood out to you in terms of, oh, we're in better shape or we're in worse shape or we're right where we thought we'd be in terms of ready for to get off the legacy and into the more modern systems?
No, I wasn't particularly surprised by anything there. Obviously, the associate director of financial management worked more directly with the engagement team on this. I think it more was a validation of, hey, here's what we have. It works. But if we really want to posture ourselves to better service our customers and be more nimble, we're going to have to move in this direction. What we already knew, but another piece of validation to say, and some indication of how to get there too. We haven't figured that out completely, but there were some recommendations that came out there, not necessarily so much the what. So I didn't find anything particularly surprising there, and I don't think anyone on our team. they kind of supported what the direction the industry is going. And so, we know we need to get there. I think we just want to be particularly careful and thoughtful about getting there. I think that's important, and we want to get it right on the first time. And so this is why we're spending so much time as we develop our framework and our roadmap towards that, because we want to have a great architecture that we can stand on for years to come.
As this framework is developed and as you kind of lay out that roadmap, what is your plan in terms of just from a timeline perspective? This is now the September of 2022, so we're about to enter fiscal 2023, and I know a lot of it depends on funding, as you mentioned. But if in a perfect world, would you begin the modernization move to the cloud in 2023 and then on to 2024, or are you still maybe another year away with some planning and some getting contracts in place and kind of doing that pre-work?
So we have about maybe another year in place from an enterprise perspective. Our financial management directorate, they're a little bit further along, but we want to consolidate it all. I think it'd be best suited to have an IBC approach, if you will. And so we're about a year out. We have requested funding to support some initiatives related to our core financial system moving to the cloud. Subject to that being available, we probably could start as early as FY24. And so we're still doing some of the initial planning. We're not just waiting there. We're going to do as much as we can with the funding we have to posture ourselves. But I think we're talking about an FY24 timeframe before we can really get going on some of these initiatives.
I'm trying to get in front of it so you don't get a lot of pitches from our vendor community thinking that you're going to have a big acquisition strategy out next week or next month or an early 2023 fiscal year.
Thank you.
So just try to get ahead of it. I want to go back around to something you said at the very beginning, which is the customer experience piece, because obviously what we're during this day of the Cloud Exchange, we're very focused on how you're delivering the best value to your customers. Where does that customer experience fit in today to your systems in terms of, like you mentioned, the mobile app, right? There's not an option for folks to maybe do their time and attendance through a mobile app. They have to be at a PC or a desktop, and they have to be logged on probably in some way. What's the customer experience like today, and then how do you envision that also improving?
So, I think we have a customer experience, at least from the feedback that we've gotten, we're doing okay. It's not perfect, but based upon the systems that we have, and we just implemented single sign-on related to our time and attendance system as well. And we're migrating a number of customers, 19 customers, over to our QuickTime time and attendance system over the next 2 years. So looking forward to improving that experience. And so for the most part, the feedback is that it's not a perfect solution. And certainly we'd love to have more flexibility, particularly a lot of feedback about a mobile capability. And we're looking to do that, particularly on our time and attendance solution moving forward. Hopefully around the 24 timeframe, we may have something available for that. And so we're kind of staying status quo. I think folks are comfortable with what works and what's secure. We're FedRAMP certified, and certainly people feel comfortable with the system that we have. But I'm of the opinion that we need to continue to evolve and be better. And part of that is really understanding what's the desires of the customer, having the voice of the customer to understand what their expectations are and what it is that we can do to propel our solutions to a point that meets their expectations and really allows them to do their work quicker, faster, and cheaper than where they are. And so a lot of that is dialogue within our customers and having the opportunity to have those feedback mechanisms, whether it's email surveys or direct interaction and focus groups that we have with our customer base to understand what it is they need and what do they need in the future, and how that we can best position our systems that we use and the data that we can provide them to be better utilized so that they can truly focus on their missions, truly focus on high value work that they need to do, and less in the inner workings of the systems that they use that's important to this mission and even functions that they have.
You mentioned the feedback piece. That's a key, something we hear a lot from a lot of agencies, voice of the customer. Currently, do you do some sort of survey? How do you bring in that voice of the customer? And I'm going to ask you, Byron, how are you doing? What kind of scores are you getting?
We're hitting the marks. Again, we're not perfect. So yes, we do have, we get direct feedback from our customer advisory groups. Most of our customers from the systems that we have are a part of that. And this is where we understand, where the pain points are. It's kind of our change control board, if you will, to say, hey, we've heard from, 3 of 10 customers that this is a desired change. This is what it would cost. Would you be open to that, assuming that there would need to be a rate increase? And so that's one form that we have. I think we're doing particularly well there. We call it our Customer Executive Advisory Board. And we have those frequently, at least quarterly. We also have quarterly, what we call our CFO / shared service provider meetings with our financial management customers that we support in our core financial system. We have about 17 of those. And so that has been all virtual, obviously. In the past, moving forward, we may get back to a in-person situation. But we provide updates on what we're doing as far as upgrades to our systems, what the direction we're going, for example, this cloud migration, and provide them to let them know that, hey, we're not just standing still here. We're looking to see how we can improve for the future. And so we get tremendous feedback from them as well. And we try to incorporate that as much as possible within the changes that we can make to ensure that we are meeting their needs based upon the feedback that we get. And so, from my part, it may be anecdotal, if you will, but I think we're doing relatively well. Not that there is an opportunity to improve, as we start making the changes and making sure that we're meeting the expectations of our customers.
I think it's really important, as you said, to have those meetings, the change control board, mainly because the Interior Business Center is in a tough spot. And I've written about this over the last 22 years. It feels like that unlike a normal business, right? A private sector business, if I want to do some upgrades to my technology, I could raise my price and say, oh, well, I'll use that extra dollar per transaction and put it towards a modernization. For you all to do that, it's not that easy. It's not that straightforward. There's a permission side of it. And then the agencies have to have the money as well in their budget. So it becomes a lot more complicated. So I could see that. How you have to really lean on that change control board, as well as the CFO shared service provider meetings with those financial management customers. Have you had that evolution? Have you seen a change in what customers expect? Have you had an evolution of the technology? Mobile was a good example, but how have things changed the last 4 or 5 years, and as our personal lives and technology has impacted what we want from work?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing and the biggest change we've seen on the heels of process automation and intelligent automation, we are seeing that become a common theme with our customers to say, hey, is there a way that we can automate this so that I don't have to have employees doing manual work that can be done, by a automation or a bot to do that? And so that has been a budding line of service that we have. Ironically, that service line is within our financial management directory because it spurred out of some automations we were doing on the accounting side of the house. And so we've organically grown that capability, all fed capability, as a matter of fact, within that directorate. But that's what we're seeing for customers. In addition, in some instances, we have some customers that come with their own automations that want to work within our systems. And we're working through that because in some instances, they're unattended. And so from a cyber and from an IT security perspective, we have to work with that with our parent OCIO stakeholders to make sure that they're comfortable with what we're doing here. But that is absolutely the feedback that we've gotten, not only from our external customers, but even our Department of Interior customers, to look at, how can we automate this? How can we make this process more efficient? Oftentimes, when we do an engagement for a robotic process automation, we start off, and more times than not, usually we find a way to streamline a particular process. In some instances, it doesn't even require automation. It just needed to be streamlined, and we've gotten it down to the point to be as efficient as possible. But there are other instances where they're absolutely primed for automations to do a lot of the manual work that employees have been doing. And really looking to step into the realm where we can get into these unattended bots that they can work, after hours when folks aren't there. And so if there's work or information to be pulled from multiple systems, it'd be ideal that could be done after hours. And then when employee comes in the morning, they already have the information that they need to do the high value work that they need to do versus some of this a little more tedious stuff where you have to pull information from one system or other. Those are the type of automations that we've been able to leverage both within the Department of Interior and also partner with other agencies as well. And so that's what we're hearing. Folks want to figure out how they can use technology to better provide services to their particular customers.
Are the bots generally on premise as well? You're using it within your data centers? Because I know a lot of times, whether you use a private sector or you build it internally, that's an easy one to put in the cloud.
Yeah, so currently they're on premise as well, and that's something that we'll need to incorporate as part of our strategy. But again, we started this work, about 4 years ago, and so that was before we really, had a good approach on this.
And I just also want to clarify something that you said is you mentioned this idea that the bots are developed and by a kind of a team of federal employees. Discuss that a little bit. Is this a service you are now providing, like another shared service you're providing? Or is it more like I'm already a financial management customer, the bot side of it is just another piece to that puzzle? It's not a separate service. It's part of when you sign up, you're getting the whole, not just ice cream, but the hot fudge too.
Oh, so it has evolved. So it started as a kind of add-on, just like you mentioned, the hot fudge on top. As of this year, it has become its own service line because we've gotten that much demand to have that. And so we're really proud of that. And so it is its own service line. We also have collaborated with other shared service providers that are offering this service. And, from our perspective, as far as the intellectual property, we're even open. There's no sense in someone recreating a wheel. If we have an automation or a bot that another provider can use for a customer, we're open to sharing that. And other agencies and providers have been very open to that as well. And so we're looking to leverage that for the good of government and to share information. And so that is a separate service line. Like I said, as of this year, and I think it's going to be one of our more prosperous service lines moving forward in the future because more and more customers are asking for, hey, how can we improve this? How can we automate this?
And I know talking to other CFOs and other offices around the government, the financial management is ripe for use of bots. I think there's a lot of manual work, a lot of the Excel spreadsheet, a lot of moving data from point A to point B that a bot could do. So I think it just makes obvious sense for you all to have that. And as soon as you can obviously move that to a more modernized platform, you'll even see more savings and more efficiencies and more services and capabilities. I want to just go back to one thing because we're pushing up against the end of this segment. But before I let you go, the unattended bots piece, how's that a challenge for you? How are you starting to look at that? As you mentioned, there's a cyber piece, but it's also, as you know, bots don't have to take breaks. Bots they don't take weekends or nights off or go on vacation. There's a lot of, opportunity there to take advantage of these kind of 24/7 services.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. It's not an insurmountable challenge. I think it's a more of a level of comfortability of having, unattended bots access, our systems. And so we're working through this because this is very new for the Department of Interior to figure out how we can do that and do that in a way that our OCIO and IT experts are comfortable with making sure that, these bots can access our payroll system, our personnel systems, or our financial management systems and not have a human being associated with it. And so today, if you want to log into the system, you have your PIV card, you do two-factor authentication, and there's a person associated by there, or at least you hope there is. And I think it's just more of being comfortable and making sure that we're doing this right with the folks that need to approve and assure that we are staying within the policies that we have within the department. And so don't get me wrong, there are several government agencies that absolutely have unattended bots and they figured it out. I think it's just a matter of us catching up and making sure that, we are sharing best practices within the community about how to handle those.
And I love the fact you said we don't need to develop it ourselves. If there's another bot somewhere that we can borrow or share, That's always the best sign for everyone. Because as we know, financial management is financial management. It's financial management across the government. Byron, we're going to take a short break. We're going to hear from our friends in industry, and then we come back. You and I will continue our conversation. So first, let me say I'm talking with Byron Adkins, the director of the Interior Business Center at the Interior Department. Stay tuned for part 2 of our discussion with the IBC after we get that industry perspective. I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to Federal News Network. Now, let me send you back to the studio for more from the Cloud Exchange.